Welcome back, viewers. You're watching WION World is One. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Chandra.
And I'm Hemkaur Saran. On the show today, we'll begin with what's happening in West Asia. Antony Blinken is in Tel Aviv to secure a peace deal. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has agreed to a bridging proposal for a truce deal. Hamas, on the other hand, accuses the United States of buying time for Israel to continue what it calls its genocide. What will a bridging proposal entail, and can it bring peace to this volatile region? That's what we'll explore on the show today.
Also on World DNA, as the race to the White House heats up, the Democratic National Convention has kicked off. President Joe Biden is all set to address the convention in a short while from now. We will be bringing you all the developments on that front. For now, let's start with the headlines.
Kamala Harris makes her first appearance on day one of the Democratic National Convention as it opens in Chicago, receives a standing ovation from the audience.
Protesters arrested at the Democratic National Convention after dozens of pro-Palestinian demonstrators break through part of the perimeter security fence, drawing riot police to the site.
Anything you'd like to say, miss?
I wonder if they knew where she comes from, where she came from, what her ideology is.
Donald Trump unleashes attacks against Kamala Harris and her running mate during a rally in York in Pennsylvania. Pardon me, that's York in Pennsylvania. Claims Joe Biden is deposed in a coup orchestrated by Harris.
US intelligence officials say they consider Iran to be responsible for a recent hack of Donald Trump's presidential campaign. It was part of the ongoing cyber attacks by Terani.
Ukrainian President Zelensky says Kyiv's assault on Russia's Kursk region shows that the Kremlin's threats of retaliation were a bluff, urges allies to loosen curbs on using foreign-supplied weapons.
Amid protests across India against rape and murder of the trainee doctor in Kolkata, Supreme Court is set to hear a suo motu case today. Bench headed by India's Chief Justice has taken cognizance of the incident.
Markets cheer appointment of Thailand's new Prime Minister. Focus shifts to revive tourism industry, but how does that impact you, the global jet setter? That's what we decode on the show as well.
Aryna Sabalenka sends out a strong message ahead of the US Open. The Belarusian beats local hope Jessica Pegula to win the Cincinnati Open. She will replace Coco Gauff as the new world number 2.
24th Cincinnati Open women's singles champion Aryna Sabalenka.
The Democratic National Convention has kick-started in Chicago. Democratic National Committee chairs Jamie Harrison and Minion Moore gavelled the convention to order amid loud cheers.
We hereby call the in-person portion of the 49th Quadrennial Democratic National Convention to order.
All eyes are on President Joe Biden as he passes the torch to Vice President Kamala Harris. In his primetime address to the convention, Biden is expected to make the case for electing Harris against Donald Trump, the Republican candidate. Reports suggest Harris is likely to join Biden on the stage. Before Biden, his wife, First Lady Jill Biden, and their daughter Ashley will ascend to the podium to speak about his presidency.
The 81-year-old ended his re-election bid a month ago following a disastrous debate performance against Donald Trump that prompted longtime allies, major donors to demand that Biden step aside. His replacement, Harris, is heading into the convention riding a historic whirlwind. Her campaign has broken records for fundraising, packed arenas with supporters and turned opinion polls in Democrats' favor. Harris thanked Biden in her first remarks at the convention.
Joe, thank you for your historic leadership, for your lifetime of service to our nation, and for all you will continue to do. We are forever grateful to you.
While there is jubilation inside the United Center, thousands are protesting outside, calling for the Biden-Harris administration to end American support for Israel. Amid the war in Gaza, dozens of protesters broke through part of the perimeter security fence, drawing riot police to the site.
Anything you'd like to say, Miss?
All right, before we move on, we're cutting live to the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, where Democrat leader Hillary Clinton is addressing the convention.
That glass ceiling is Kamala Harris raising her hand and taking the oath of office as our 47th President of the United States. My friends, when a barrier falls for one of us, it falls. It falls and clears the way for all of us. So for the next 78 days, we need to work harder than we ever have. We need to beat back the dangers that Trump and his allies pose to the rule of law and our way of life. Don't get distracted or complacent. Talk to your friends and neighbors. Volunteer. Be proud champions for the truth and for the country that we all love. I want my grandchildren and their grandchildren to know I was here at this moment, that we were here, and that we were with Kamala Harris every step of the way. This is our time, America. This is when we stand up. This is when we break through. The future is here. It's in our grasp. Let's go win it.
What a huge ovation Hillary Clinton got when she walked out on stage.
And as she mentioned, Shivan, these next 78 days are going to be absolutely crucial. She's urged Democrats not to get complacent, not to just... she's urged them to have conversations among each other and talk about the elections, because this is the moment that matters the most. Now, of course, we also spoke about the fact that Harris has been riding a whirlwind. The way that she's picked up pace, that is something that has really stunned everyone.
And we'll be now cutting across to Susan Terani, who's joining us from New York. Susan, we've all been catching glimpses of the convention. Hillary Clinton got a huge ovation. Talk to us about what, reactions you've picked up from the convention so far.
Yeah, it seems that members at the convention, the Democratic Party, are very excited to be there in Chicago, inside the United Center, as you mentioned, outside. There are widespread protests. And you also have a group of uncommitted voters that want to vote Democrat, but are still waiting to see what Kamala Harris's policies would be regarding Gaza and America's policies towards Israel. But it's very interesting that first we saw a surprise appearance by Vice President Kamala Harris. She knows that tonight is Joe Biden's night. It's a very bitter night for President Biden and the Biden family. We can't sugarcoat that. this, his stepping aside really played out in everyone's public eye, the way he was sort of told to step aside because he wouldn't be able to win against former President Donald Trump. And the way that they're leading up to that, I think, is very interesting as well. On the one hand, you have Kamala coming. On the other hand, you have someone like AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is really a very progressive Democrat, who has very progressive policies. She got a prime time viewing and slot during this Democratic convention, which shows the direction that the Democrat Party wants to go towards. And then, of course, you have someone like Hillary Clinton, who many believe she sort of made a dent in that glass ceiling, but didn't finish the job. They're all, talking about Kamala on the one hand, but, President Biden's speech, I think, will be very interesting to hear and how he plans to pass this torch to Kamala Harris.
Absolutely, Susan. In fact, we were just discussing this and I was going to come to this next. It was just a month ago that Biden stepped aside, paving the way for Kamala Harris. If polls are to be believed, she's gained great momentum within this short period. What reactions would you say have you picked up on that front? What is the response to Kamala Harris so far?
Yeah, I think we have to look at that with caution, just because right now the period of happiness, joy, so-called unity is because Joe Biden is no longer the nominee, sadly for him. And it's because, there's new life, so to say, as the Democrats say, in their party. But Kamala Harris does not have a policy outline of how she wants to govern moving forward on her website. Now, we hope to hear from her regarding that in the near future. But the economic plans that she put forth a few days ago, for example, we got a glimmer of that. And even her most staunch allies were concerned that they may be too much to the left and, Donald Trump may be able to take advantage of it. So once we hear more about her policies, I think we'll get a better understanding of where Americans stand. But as for now, there is no doubt that Democrats seem to be united behind her. I just want to say one thing really quickly, food for thought. We talk about unity among the Democrat Party, but we have to look at what is not happening as well. For example, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro is not going to be at the DNC at all. He used to be a candidate possibly for VP for Kamala Harris. President Biden, former President Obama, these people are leaving the convention before Harris accepts officially the nomination as well. And on the other hand, you have those protesters outside and that part of the Democrat Party as well. So this unity message has to be taken with a grain of salt as well.
All right, Susan, thank you for sharing all your thoughts on that and getting us the reactions that you've picked up. Of course, there'll be lots more to discuss on other big developments that are coming in from around the globe. We'll come back to you in a bit, so stay with us.
All right, U.S. Secretary of State, meanwhile, Antony Blinken, says Israel has accepted the latest bridging proposal on a Gaza ceasefire deal.
And this is, of course, urging Hamas to do the same. However, Hamas has criticized the claim, accusing Washington of favoring Israel. Blinken said that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has assured him of support for a U.S. proposal to bridge gaps on a ceasefire in Gaza. His comments came after a 2.5-hour-long meeting with Netanyahu.
In a very constructive meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu today, he confirmed to me that Israel accepts the bridging proposal, that he supports it. It's now incumbent on Hamas to do the same.
Blinken also said that Netanyahu promised to send an Israeli team to new talks scheduled this week in Cairo. He added that Israel also agreed to support efforts to vaccinate Gazans for polio after its first reported case of the disease in 25 years.
And we're working with the Israeli government on that, and I believe that we'll be able to move forward with a plan to do that in the coming weeks. It is urgent, it is vital.
Netanyahu said that he sought to free a maximum number of hostages in the first stage of a ceasefire deal.
I would like to emphasize the efforts to release a maximum number of living hostages already in the first stage of the deal.
Blinken, on his 9th trip to the region since the war began, also met Israeli President Isaac Herzog and the Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. Blinken will now travel to Egypt and then Qatar to push for the truce.
In Israel, families of hostages continued their protests urging a deal.
My dad, we tried to bring them home to us.
Bring them home is USA.
Bring our children.
Talks in Qatar seeking a ceasefire and hostage return agreement last week paused without a breakthrough. They are expected to resume this week based on the US proposal. Hamas, who did not take part in the Doha talks directly, criticized Blinken's claim, saying it raises many ambiguities. It said that the proposal was not what was presented to US nor what we agreed on.
Now, this comes as Hamas took responsibility for a blast in Tel Aviv on Sunday and announced a resumption of suicide bombing inside Israel after many years. Meanwhile, Gaza health authorities claim that Israeli military strikes killed at least 30 Palestinians across the Gaza Strip on Monday.
The Israeli military said its air force struck a number of Hezbollah weapons storage facilities in Lebanon's eastern Bekaa Valley. Lebanese state media reported that at least 3 Israeli airstrikes hit towns in Baalbek district. Lebanon's health ministry said that 8 people, including 6 Lebanese citizens and 2 Syrian children, were injured.
All right, to discuss all the developments on that front, we have with us our correspondent Susan Terani from New York. Now, Susan, thank you so much for staying on with us. Of course, we're talking about a bridging proposal here. What I want to understand is what would that entail?
Yeah, what we know so far is that this bridging proposal, which is essentially a proposal that is hoped by the United States that would agree by both sides, doesn't include 2 of Benjamin Netanyahu's key demands. One of them, that Israeli presence continues along the Gaza-Egyptian border, and for a mechanism in central Gaza to be established that militant Hamas doesn't continue to rule once again the Gaza Strip. So those are 2 aspects that Netanyahu was very adamant in having in any proposal, and it appears that this bridging proposal doesn't include that. We'll learn more about it in the next couple of days, but as of now, the Israeli television is reporting that these negotiations will continue and that Netanyahu has agreed to send negotiators to Cairo.
Now, of course, this is his 9th visit there. Everyone, at least in the Biden camp, would be hoping to arrive at some kind of conclusion here that they can also announce back home. All right. Thank you so much for getting us the latest, Susan. And there's more to discuss from the Democratic National Convention as well. We'll come back to you in a bit. All right, moving further from here on to the Russia-Ukraine front. Russia has ruled out any peace talks with Ukraine, and this comes amid Kiev raising pressure on the Kremlin by claiming fresh advances in its offensive into Russian territory.
Now, President Volodymyr Zelensky said that Ukraine now controls over 1,250 square kilometers and 92 settlements in the Kursk region.
На сьогодні наші сили контролюють більше ніж
Ukrainian warriors continue the defensive operation in the designated areas of the Kursk region. As of today, our forces control more than 1,250 square kilometers of enemy territory and 92 settlements. We continue to strengthen our positions, stabilize designated areas, and, what is very important, replenish the exchange fund for Ukraine.
поповнення обмінного фонду для України.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky further added that his country's assault on Russia's Kursk region shows that Kremlin threats of retaliation were a bluff.
Zelensky said that Ukraine was achieving its objectives. Officials previously said that the objectives include stretching Russian forces, creating a buffer zone in Russian territory, and seeking an end to the war on fair terms.
The Ukrainian president has appealed to Western leaders to allow Ukraine's troops to use long-range Storm Shadow missiles to hit Russian territory.
If our partners lifted all the current restrictions on the use of weapons on Russian territory, we would not need to physically enter, particularly the Kursk region, to protect our Ukrainian citizens in the border communities and eliminate Russia's potential for aggression.
Zelensky urged diplomats to organize a second round of peace talks this year, but Kremlin aid has said that Ukraine's incursion had pushed peace talks further away.
Vladimir Putin has demanded Ukraine cede swathes of territory if it wants a ceasefire. On the other hand, Zelensky, who has ruled out direct talks with the Kremlin, demands Russia's full withdrawal from Ukrainian territory, including Crimea and reparations.
Ukraine, meanwhile, pushed into Kursk. Bracing for a further assault, Ukraine ordered the evacuation of families from the key city of Pokrovsk as Moscow's forces inch closer to the logistics hub. A Russian military investigator has claimed that a third bridge over the Seym River inside Russia was hit over the weekend. The Russian Defense Ministry said that it has thwarted Ukrainian attacks on 3 more villages in the Donetsk region. Moscow said that it captured the town of Artemovo, one of the largest Russian gains of recent weeks.
Ukrainian artillery fired on a bus stop in the city of Donetsk, which is under Russia's control. And Ukraine said Russian attacks killed 4 people in the frontline settlements of Donetsk and Zarish. On the diplomatic front, seeking to give impetus to a possible settlement, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi will visit Ukraine on the 23rd of August.
Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi will undertake an official visit to Ukraine later this week on Friday, 23rd August, at the invitation of President of Ukraine, His Excellency Volodymyr Zelensky. This also is a landmark and historic visit, since this will be the first time that an Indian Prime Minister will be visiting Ukraine in more than 30 years since the diplomatic relations were established between our countries.
With Prime Minister Modi set to depart on a visit to Poland and then Ukraine, mere weeks after his trip to Russia, our principal diplomatic correspondent Siddhant Sibal sends us this report from Warsaw on what we can expect from the Indian Prime Minister's Kiev visit.
The Indian government and the Ukrainian government has formally announced that the Indian Prime Minister will be travelling to Ukraine. The Indian Prime Minister's visit is seen significant in the backdrop of the Russia-Ukraine war. India's stance has been that dialogue and diplomacy is the way forward, and no solution can come on the battlefield. India, of course, has extended its support in terms of humanitarian aid to Ukraine. 16 packages have been sent when it comes to humanitarian aid, and also India participated at the Peace Summit in Switzerland earlier this year. But remember, while Indian Prime Minister's presence in Kyiv will be a strong support for President Zelensky, India is also a close partner of Russia. The Indian Prime Minister was in Russia just 2 months ago, and there have been several pillars of that relationship: defense, energy, and others as well. But all in all, India's position on the war has been one of neutrality. But this visit, the outcome can be seen significant in terms of Indian Prime Minister in person present in the country. That, of course, will be welcomed by the West.
Moving on then, the construction has started for a German military base in Lithuania. The base can accommodate up to 4,000 combat-ready German troops.
Well, the base, once completed by the end of 2027, will be the first permanent deployment for the German military since World War II.
Now, last year, Germany committed to deploy troops in the NATO and the European Union member bordering Russia. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius compared the decision to the posting of Allied forces in West Germany during the Cold War to defend Western Europe in case of a Soviet attack.
Up to 4,000 soldiers, storage and maintenance for tanks and other equipment and shooting ranges of various kinds will be accommodated at the base in Rudinkai, which is near Vilnius, the capital, and just 246 kilometers from Russian ally Belarus. A further 1,000 or so German contractors, both military and civilian, will be assigned to various locations throughout Lithuania.
In one of the biggest building projects in its history, Lithuania's Chief of Defense, Raimundas Vaitsonoras, estimated that the nation will spend more than $1.1 billion over the course of the following 3 years to establish the facility. However, only about a fifth of the compound buildings in Rudinkai have been contracted for construction, raising fears it will not be ready in time.
Now, according to a confidential draft budget seen by Reuters, in June, the German government has asked Parliament for 2.93 billion euros to order 105 Leopard 2 AB tanks, partly to equip the Lithuanian base, but the budget infighting within Germany's fractious coalition is jeopardizing Berlin's pledge to upgrade its military.
And with that, it's time now for a short break.
Don't go anywhere. This is World DNA. Lots more on the other side. When we come back, we'll bring you more updates on the trouble which is mounting for Pakistan's ex-ISI chief Faiz Hamid. The former head of Pakistan's intelligence agency is facing legal ramifications for corruption during service, along with questionable acts allegedly committed post-retirement.
We will also take you back to the Democratic National Convention Center, where US President Joe Biden will be addressing the Democratic supporters. Stay tuned for that.
Massive turning point in the West Asia conflict. Israel opens Iran war front. Hamas chief Ismail Haniyeh killed in Tehran, a targeted attack during a visit to Iran for the new president's inauguration. Nearly 2,000 kilometers away in Beirut, Israel kills a top Hezbollah commander in a targeted strike. West Asia on the boil, war clouds darken, and the threat of a wider conflict grows bigger than ever.
Namaste. Hello friends. We did Dr. Subash Chandra show, popularly known as DSC show, for 4 years, from August 2014 to August 2018. 28 states of Bharat. Of course, we reached out to all of you in 190 countries across the world. The show was very successful. Each episode was being watched by almost 25 million people every week. For past 6 years, the demand of the show has never died down. People write to us, people ask for the show to restart again. Hence, we are beginning the show once again on All Z Network, also on WION, which is the global network channel from India. Again, thank you for your love and affection. See you soon at Subash Chandra Show.
To bring the benefits of the Subash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at yoursarthi@such.org.in.
Welcome back to World DNA. Thank you so much for staying with us. Lots lined up on this side of the show. Let's get started with the headlines first.
Democratic National Convention opens in Chicago. President Joe Biden to speak shortly, expected to urge fellow Democrats to unite behind Vice President Kamala Harris in the fight for the White House.
Kamala Harris makes her first appearance on day one of the Democratic National Convention as it opens in Chicago, receives a standing ovation from the audience.
Protesters arrested at the Democratic National Convention after dozens of pro-Palestinian demonstrators break through part of the perimeter security fence, drawing riot police to the site.
I wonder if they knew where she comes from, where she came from, what her ideology is.
Donald Trump unleashes attacks against Kamala Harris in a running mate during a rally in York in Pennsylvania, claims Joe Biden is deposed in a coup orchestrated by Harris.
US intelligence officials say they consider Iran to be responsible for recent hack of Donald Trump's presidential campaign. It was part of ongoing cyber attacks by Tehran.
Ukrainian President Zelensky says Kyiv's assault on Russia's Kursk region shows that Kremlin threats of retaliation were a bluff, urges allies to loosen curbs on using foreign-supplied weapons.
Amid protests across India against the rape and murder of a trainee doctor in Kolkata, the Supreme Court of India is set to hear a suo motu case. Today, bench headed by India's Chief Justice has taken cognizance of the incident.
Singapore announces its first ever unemployment insurance amid slowing economy. Is the policy shift just a smokescreen, or will the move provide equitable growth in Asia's most expensive city? We'll explore that on the show.
Aryna Sabalenka sends out a strong message ahead of the US Open. The Belarusian beats local hope Jessica Pegula to win the Cincinnati Open. She will replace Coco Gauff as the new world number 2.
Before Cincinnati Open women's singles champion Aryna Sabalenka.
The Democratic National Convention, it has kick-started in Chicago.
Well, Democratic National Committee chairs Jamie Harrison and Minion Moore gavelled the convention to order amid loud cheers.
Hereby call the in-person portion of the 49th Quadrennial Democratic National Convention to order.
Now all eyes on President Joe Biden as he passes the torch to Vice President Kamala Harris. In his primetime address to the convention, Biden is expected to make the case for electing Harris against Donald Trump, the Republican candidate. Reports suggest Harris is likely to join Biden on the stage before Biden, his wife, First Lady Dr. Jill Biden, and their daughter Ashley ascend to the podium to speak about his presidency.
81-year-old ended his re-election bid just a month ago following a disastrous debate performance against Donald Trump that prompted longtime allies of the Democrats, major donors, to demand that he step aside. Harris thanked Biden in her first remarks at the convention.
Joe, thank you for your historic leadership, for your lifetime of service to our nation, and for all you will continue to do. We are forever grateful to you.
Thousands have gathered to show their support for Harris as the officially nominated Democratic Party candidate. Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, in her speech, backed Harris, saying she is the person who would lead the U.S. forward. She highlighted Harris's journey as an attorney, adding that her experience would help her lead the country better.
Kamala carries with her the hopes of every child she protected, every family she helped, every community she served. So as president, she will always have our backs, and she will be a fighter for us. She will fight to lower costs for hardworking families, open the doors wide for good-paying jobs, and yes, she will restore abortion rights nationwide.
While there is jubilation inside the United Center, thousands are protesting outside, calling for the Biden-Harris administration to end American support for Israel amid the war in Gaza. Dozens of protesters broke through part of the perimeter security fence, drawing riot police to the site.
We've seen moments like this in the United States.
The deadly UK riots witnessed nationwide violence against Muslims, Asian communities, immigrants, non-white businesses and the police.
Now, it evoked the spectre of racism and safety among Brits of colour. The violence began after misinformation about a deadly knife attack on young girls spread online. But it morphed into a much wider threat that has left the minority communities shaken. Our next report gets you all the details on this. Take a look.
Racist riots that erupted across the United Kingdom in the first half of August were ostensibly aimed at Muslims, immigrants and the police. But for many black Britons, it also reignited memories of racist violence by the far right during the second half of the 20th century.
Are we in 2024 or 1974?
That's Ngozi Fulani, the CEO and founder of Sister Space, an African and Caribbean heritage charity in East London. The organisation boarded up its windows as supporters warned them that far-right rioters were headed that way. The riots were fuelled by misinformation spread online that the suspect in a deadly knife attack was an Islamist migrant. 3 little girls, Elsie Stancoombe, Alice da Silva Aguiar and BB King were killed during that incident. As well as white rioters attacking hotels housing asylum seekers, immigration centres, mosques, police officers and shops, videos also circulated online of white men attacking people of colour across the country. That includes a group badly beating a black man in Manchester. Kaushik Mistry is the founder of the Anthony Walker Foundation, a charity combating racism and hate crime.
Suddenly, you're a prisoner in your own home, in your own country, in the place where you live and work and contribute to that society. It's incredibly unhealthy, that result of the last week's actions have caused that for people.
Mistry said the foundation would normally have up to 50 referrals a week. But in the first 2 weeks of August, more than 300 people affected by race and religious hate approached his charity.
And as UK witnesses its worst riots in years, as I mentioned, incidents of violence, arson and looting have taken over the headlines after a stabbing rampage at a dance class left 3 young girls dead and many more wounded.
Immediately after the attack, rumours started circulating on social media about the background of the British-born 17-year-old suspect. And these false posts claimed that the suspect's name was Ali al-Shakati, an asylum seeker and a Muslim immigrant.
While the rumours have been quashed by a UK court, the latest report suggests the reach of the false news is much wider than estimated. According to Hootsuite, a social media management platform, posts show the false identity of the Southport stabbing suspect were viewed over 420,000 times on social media. Posts mentioning the false name were viewed over 90,000 times, whereas videos showing the fake name were watched over 330,000 times. Meanwhile, the false information was shared in over 4,500 posts across X, Facebook, YouTube, Quora, Reddit. On the day of the stabbing alone, more than 2,600 posts mentioned the false identity.
What's alarming is that most of these posts particularly focused on the asylum seeker claim. The data shows how the misinformation spread like wildfire in a matter of hours, having been picked up by thousands of individual users and shared among communities. And is a classic example of how misinformation can lead to actual violence. China's once thriving ride-hailing industry has hit a roadblock.
An explosion of drivers coupled with a weakening economy, it's led to a market glut. Take a look at this next report for more on this.
For years, becoming a ride-hailing driver in China was seen as a last resort for the jobless. However, the situation is changing rapidly. Local governments in several cities have issued warnings about an oversaturated ride-hailing market. As of June, over 7.1 million drivers were registered, a sharp increase from 4.5 million just 2 years ago. Despite this influx, driver incomes are falling due to market saturation. Major cities are reporting an average daily income drop of 9.9 yuan in the second quarter. The challenges facing China's ride-hailing market are not limited to oversupply. Demand is also slowing, linked to the country's broader economic struggles. In the second quarter, Nanning saw a more than 10% decrease in daily orders per vehicle, and driver incomes fell by 1.3% year-on-year. This comes as the Chinese economy posted a lower than expected growth rate of 4.7% for the quarter. With urban employment rising to 5.2% in July, the outlook for ride-hailing drivers remains bleak. Adding to the pressures of traditional ride-hailing drivers is the emergence of driverless taxis. Companies like Baidu's Apollo Go are expanding rapidly with plans to deploy 1,000 autonomous vehicles in Wuhan by the end of 2024. Analysts believe these self-driving taxis could significantly disrupt the industry, offering competitive pricing and a superior passenger experience. As this new technology gains traction, the future of China's ride-hailing market could face even greater uncertainty. Business Bureau WION World is One.
All right, let's now take a look at developments from the world of technology. Water usage in Virginia's data center alley, it surged by nearly 60% since 2019. The US state of Virginia hosts the highest concentration of data centers worldwide, including those operated by tech giants like Amazon, Google, and Microsoft. According to records obtained through a Freedom of Information request, these massive facilities have consumed over 7 billion litres of water in 2023, up from 4.2 billion litres in 2019. Environmental advocates are sounding the alarm about the anticipated surge in demand for computing infrastructure driven by AI. And this trend has prompted experts to question the sustainability of such rapid growth, especially as the tech industry anticipates a significant expansion in the data centers in the coming years.
A recent report has revealed that the South Korean government intends to roll out tablets with AI-powered textbooks in classrooms. However, some parents are concerned about this initiative. The government plans to introduce these tablets next year, with the goal of having teachers use AI-powered textbooks for all subjects except music, art, physical education and ethics by 2028. Now, in response, over 50,000 parents have signed a petition urging the government to prioritize students' overall well-being over technological advancements. Parents are worried that excessive use of digital digital devices could harm children's brain development, attention spans, and problem-solving abilities, especially given their already high usage of smartphones and tablets.
The Indian police have uncovered a major cybercrime network with links to Chinese handlers. During the investigation, it was found that the investment fraud racket extends from India's Haryana to Jalandhar, a small district in the Indian state of Punjab. The local police have arrested a mobile phone shop owner from Rajasthan. It is alleged that the suspect was working for some unknown Chinese handlers and had even travelled to Colombo to meet with these handlers. Meanwhile, the police found contact details of 4 Chinese nationals on the suspect's mobile, and the suspect has claimed that he came in contact with the Chinese handlers through a Nepali national on WhatsApp, adding that he later used the Telegram app to connect them.